Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul, and in this RedGamingTech.com video, we're going to be discussing and analysing tech news which, as usual, has popped up in the past 24 or so hours. And we're going to start things out with a story that just spread like wildfire on the internet the moment it was published, and that is that AMD will be losing Lisa Su as their CEO, and she will be transitioning to IBM, where she will be second in command of the company, but eventually replace the current CEO. Well, as I mentioned, this story just went ballistic online and gained so much traction so quickly. Within like an hour or so, Lisa Su herself took to Twitter to deny it. She said that not only did she have no plans to leave AMD and that she loves the company, but furthermore, she believes that the best is yet to come, which is actually quite an impressive statement given what AMD have accomplished over the past couple of years. So WCCF Tech, who are the publishers of the article along with the author themselves, doubled down on what they've said. In a statement at the very top of the article now, it reads that the author is 100% confident in what they have published, and they believe that Lisa Su is going to be leaving the company. Now, of course, Lisa Su, if she was leaving, there's a good chance she would deny it anyway, but personally speaking, I don't think that she will be leaving. But in this video, I wanted to go through a bit of the backstory of her history at IBM, along with what she's accomplished at AMD, and then kind of tie everything nicely together. By the way, if you prefer things in the written form, this first story is also available as an article, and you can find it, of course, linked in the description of this very video. So let's get some backstory on why AMD are in a very different position now compared to what they were just a few years ago, and why Lisa Su has been so important for their change, for this different trajectory. Well, if you look at the stock price of AMD back in 2015 and early 2016, it had fallen to just a few dollars a share. Actually, for a couple of months, it was trading under $2 a share. And in 2015, their revenue had fallen 28%, so almost 30% compared to 2014. That, my friends, is significant. As for the reason behind all of this, well, it wasn't a singular reason. It was the perfect storm, as things tend to be. The company's market share in the now very lucrative server and high-performance computing market was slipping to basically nothing because Optron was no longer competitive to what Intel were offering. And then on the desktop side of things, it's not that the FX series of CPUs were awful, but they were thought of as value CPUs and certainly couldn't keep up with Intel in certain workloads. Gaming being one of those. We actually reviewed the FX 8350 back in the day, which we were sent by AMD. The graphics division was doing significantly better, at least in my opinion. Let me know if you feel differently. But I think cards such as the 290 and 390 were performing really well in games, and they also had some other hits as well. That's not to say that those cards were perfect. The 290X in particular was kind of hard, and yeah, well, most of us know the story about that, but they were fairly competitive, but unfortunately, Nvidia were being super aggressive at that point, and AMD just couldn't really catch a break. Well, that is until October 2014, when Lisa Su became the CEO of the company. So she started to implement some wide sweeping changes to the plan of AMD, or what their internal vision would be. So to give you one example of this, back in 2012, the earnings for the non-PC market, so that would be consoles, embedded solutions, blah 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 blah, was about 10% of the company's total earnings. 3 years later, this became a much healthier 40%. That's a significant growth, right? Which obviously started to instill confidence from investors. A lot of this was down to securing wins from Sony and Microsoft to design and create the APUs for their consoles. But other things such as new architectures that they were we were starting to hear about at that point, and Lisa Su basically dragged the AMD ship to the shore, repaired it, and now it's setting sail as much stronger than compared to what it was. But That isn't to say that Lisa hasn't had any history with IBM. In fact, she's had significant history with IBM. Back in 1995, I was about to say 2005, but 1995, she was actually employed by IBM as a research staff member, and her focus was on device physics. She was then appointed to be the vice president of IBM's semiconductor research about 5 years after that, so in the year 2000. It's crazy that that's 19 years ago, but there we go. She became the technical assistant to Lou Gernester, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, and then she became eventually the director of emerging products. What is slightly lesser known about the PlayStation 3, believe it or not, is that Lisa Su was kind of involved in the creation of the system. No, she wasn't at Sony giving tweaks and, architecture advice to Ken, but what she did do, well, do you remember the Cell CPU, right? Which was a joint collaboration between Toshiba, Sony, naturally, as well as IBM. Well, her team was the team that came up with the fundamental building blocks, of the Cell processor. She came up with the basic idea of how it all works. So, if you think about it, in that respect, her rejoining IBM as number 2 in the company, and then subsequently replacing Gino Rametti as the CEO and the president, in that respect does have some merit. It's not that out of the question that she would like to rejoin IBM. And IBM aren't exactly what they used to be back in the mid-90s, but they are a massive force in certain things like cloud computing. So yeah, I think IBM would want to kind of change and evolve continuously as a company, because what company doesn't want to? But I don't think it's going to be Lisa Su. So basically, over at WCCF Tech, they say that the hiring of Rick Bergman, who used to obviously be one of the AMD alumni back in the day, he's now the lead for PC and semi-custom business, is because he is going to be groomed to become Lisa Su's successor as the chair of AMD. But is there any truth to any of this? Well, the history parts that I've told you thus far, yeah, there's truth to it, but in terms of her move back to IBM, I don't think so. There's a couple of reasons, first of which Lisa has actually taken to Twitter and denied it, which is pretty telling. I mean, it's not that she kind of waited for this news to percolate over a couple of days. No, she literally responded within, I don't know, a couple of hours maybe at most. So that's something you need to bear in mind. Technically speaking, she could just be denying it because she doesn't want to say it yet, which is going to cause investors to panic, because WCCF Tech are alleging it's going to be about 90 days-ish for the transition to happen. So maybe she wants to make sure that, and AMD as a company wants it, kind of shore up any potential loose ends, and that's why she's denying it. But the way she phrased it, it wasn't just no, I'm not leaving. She said that she loves AMD, which is definitely a very stock answer. No one's going to be well, I kind of like the job for the money. But I do genuinely believe that she likes what she does. That's for A. And for B, she also said that the best is yet to come. And I think as a company, he says as he knocks his laptop, I think as a company, AMD definitely are still growing. They're not okay, well, you feel that they've hit the pinnacle. I think as a company, AMD are still growing and evolving. I think their CPU division has done tremendously. I think that the Ryzen CPUs and soon the Rome CPUs are just amazing products, and they've definitely been a shot in the arm to the industry. I think that the GPU division isn't quite up to the same level. We've heard so much about the big RDNA GPUs, and Lisa herself actually kind of teased it recently. So I think that we're going to continue to see products from the company, and I think that they're going to be very aggressive over the next few years. Is Lisa forever and a day going to remain at AMD? Probably not. I mean, I think eventually she may move on, but personally I think that she doesn't, and I don't know her personally, I've never met her. I've met some people in the industry, I've had the pleasure to speak to some people in the industry, but I've never met Lisa Su, and it's a shame. I've spoken to Robert Halleck over at AMD and several other key people, and they're really cool, but unfortunately I've never met Lisa Su, so I don't know this for certain, but from what I kind of gather, I don't think that she's ready to leave just yet. I think that she still feels that there's work left to be done. Next up, we have some leaked benchmarks which were available on the Open Benchmarking Database website. They have since been removed, but the website tomshardware.com managed to snag images of the results. I'm not going to go through all of them because it's going to take way too long, but we can see the sheer performance of the EPYC 7742 CPU. So 7742 is said to have 64 cores and 128 threads. It is said to be the flagship model, and by the way, the CPU has 256 megabytes of level 3 cache and comes with a TDP. So far anyway, these of course are not confirmed exactly by AMD, but the leaks do look rather promising, but the TDP of the CPU is 225 watts. So this processor will run with a base frequency of 2.25 GHz, but can boost up to 3.4 GHz, which is really impressive considering the sheer number of cores that are running here. It basically puts it on par in terms of frequency with a very slight base frequency increase of 50 MHz compared to the 32 core 7601, although the 7601 does have 45 watts lower TDP, so 180 versus 225. So, enough about all of that. What about the actual performance? Well, the only thing I can say is that EPYC is just ridiculous. The only caveat I will say is that the memory speeds here are mixed. We have some memory which is running at 2666 and other memory which is other tests which are running at 2933, which obviously in some benchmarks it's going to make less of a difference, but in other benchmarks memory speed equal good. But either way, the performance results here are pretty spectacular for the 7742s. And for example, the scalable video technology generally does very well for Intel Xeon chips, but despite this upper hand that you would typically expect Intel to have, the 7742s beat the Platinum 8280s by almost 60% with SVT-A1, and indeed some of these other tests are quite significant. There are some tests which Intel do rather well in, such as SVT VP9, where Intel does do very well, about 85% faster, but in other applications, such as the Linux kernel build, it's 53% faster than the Xeon Platinum 8280, and 5.6% faster than dual Xeon Platinum 8280s. In rendering workloads in C-Ray and POV-Ray, the 64-core processor actually outperforms the Intel offering by almost 20% and almost 7%. This isn't to say that it's completely and utterly demolishing all of Intel's offerings, because don't forget, Intel are actually launching a up to 56-core Cooper Lake Xeon scalable processor. This will also be compatible, by the way, with Ice Lake. So 56 cores is an awful lot of cores, but it also has significantly higher TDP. I guess my point is that until we see the benchmarks of this, officially, you can't exactly count it 100% win for AMD, but it is looking very good. And I actually know some people who work in the server space, and, it's quite interesting because a couple of people have told me that generally their clients, because they do contracting work, generally their clients are not interested in anything other than Intel. But with Rome, just because of the price/performance, they're willing to take a chance on it. They're willing to try out Rome despite not being interested at all in the polls. Next up, Shield. No, not from Marvel, but actually from Nvidia, despite the fact that we've not heard anything from Nvidia regarding Shield devices since 2017. XDNA developers have reported, actually yesterday, that there may be some refreshes happening for Shield. In fact, it could be up to 2 devices. This actually builds on what we learned last month with the FCC, Federal Communications Commission. They basically regulate telecommunication devices in the US, if you didn't know. There were actually a couple of new filings from Nvidia regarding the Shield TV, and the filings were referenced as the Nvidia Corporation Shield Android TV Game Console P3430. Currently, the model that we have with Shield is P2897, so this would at least indicate that there are some changes to this particular version of Shield. What the differences are, who the heck knows. Further to this, there was another filing which was related to P2897, so it's possible that Nvidia are doing a 2-pronged strategy. The first would be refreshing the current Shield model, and the second option is that they are also working as well on a new product. So what we could see is a higher clocked version of the current model, or maybe they're just going to lower the operating voltages or reduce the cost of it or whatever, and then further we could see a second version which would obviously be more powerful than what we currently have. XDNA developers have said that they've found references in Nvidia's kernel source code as well as the Shield Experience 8 software, and this is known as SIF, S-I-F, which does indicate that Nvidia are planning to release a Shield TV system which would add SD support, but also potentially dropping the USB port as well as TV tuner. It's going to be really interesting to see if they do this, given what we've learned about Nintendo as well as, and of course their Switch plans. I don't know though, I've never actually really used a Shield device. In the comments, what do you think of Shield? Would you be excited if they did launch a new one? Well, with any luck, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you did, then subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so, and also share the video on social media, and also drop us a like because it helps us out a ton. And with any luck, you'll also have an amazing day. So take care of yourselves. Bye for now.